The party returns from their adventures on the other side of the mountains, having been rescued by a group of mountain furies. News of the discovery of an ancient mountain fortress which predates the settling of the valley stuns the kingdom. The helm of the mountain in Mohim is named Olgard. He wishes to speak with the party about the discovery and welcomes them to one of his grand feasts to celebrate what is surely to be considered a momentous find. At the feast, characters are in the presence of the high and mighty of the great city. Brother Goblet has too much to drink and manages to offend an important Skyhorn. The Broadbeard, Olaf, who has been in charge of Brother Goblet, has had enough of the monk. Olaf finds a way to relieve himself of the nuisance by calling upon an ancient tradition whereby a Broadbeard or Skyhorn are given in service to the other branch of the religion. Brother Goblet is sentenced by his master to, quote, penance of the tongue, which binds him to the cleric Goran for a year, where his behavior in the name of the Broadbeards is to be recorded. Goran is pleased to have yet another in service to him, especially a Broadbeard. A prominent Broadbeard in the city, one called Romars, is impressed by the good humor and talents of Julie, who makes use of his musical and poetic talents to charm the guests. Romars offers to help Julie in any way he can for any minor offense he may incur in the future. Romars claims to be a powerful man in Mohim and the surrounding lands, and encourages Julie to revisit the city after his duty to Goran is fulfilled. Julie takes note to use the name Romars if needed and is delighted to be one of the stars at the feast. There is a human present at the feast. The Dwarfkin call them lesser folk. Hyaphys gets in a bit of trouble talking with this lesser folk about smuggling in an attempt to impress the foreigner. The human turns out to be an Oscoman dignitary named Jazul. Jazul makes mention of Hyaphys to Captain Lorcum, one of the military commanders for Mohim. Lorcum tells Hyaphys he's going to be watched closely. The warriors Osiris and Yegar brag about their exploits to guests at the feast. Some are interested, others find them to be naive and talkative. The helm of Mohim, Olgard, takes a shine to Yegar and rewards him for his service with a battle ram and some other small treasures, and says he will mention to Yegar's adopted father, the helm of the Duvok at Mount Trollground, that his son has been a worthy warrior. The party meets the ambassador of the Oscoman people to the Valley Kingdom, who happens to be in Mohim that night and is attending the feast with Jazul. Her name is Alaza Lazra, and she seems very interested in their adventures. Her young 11-year-old daughter, Alandra, is there and makes friends with Julie, who juggles knives for her. She also is charmed by Osiris, who tells her he will teach her how to hunt for giants one day to make her laugh. Osiris gives her a pet mouse he's been keeping with him for a time. Alandra is an energetic presence throughout the feast and seems fascinated by everything she sees and hears. Toward the end of the feast, the helm of Mohim gathers the party together to hear of this ancient fortress and the mysterious black ooze that took the mind of one of his soldiers. The party begins to tell their tale when they are interrupted by bad news. A messenger comes and lets all know of a recent tragedy. The frost giants were spotted and tracked to a nearby point. Their kind broke, seeing the approaching Dwarfkin army, into small bands and fled back into the ice wastes. The commanding general of the Mountain Furies, named Malpus, led one force of 40 to maneuver and cut off some of the creatures. While the other contingents were unable to find giants, Malpus and his men were laid upon and struck down in ambush. The general's head was returned in a sack, thrown by a frost giant to a group of Dwarfkin scouts. The helm is in distress at having to bring the bad news to his people. It is then that a drunk Osiris stands and says he and his fellow warriors will help avenge the slight. The helm and Captain Lorcum give each other a look and say that as a matter of fact the newcomers can help. There is a newly designed trap at a location behind the wall of rocks called the Gap, just at the edge of the ice wastes. The helm asks the party to accompany Captain Lorcum and his men the next day to try to capture one of the frost giants that are known to be in the area. If it can be captured, they reason, perhaps the valley can learn why the creatures are so close to the valley, something which has not been known to have occurred in over 100 years. The next day, the party follows Captain Lorcam and a few dozen soldiers through a hidden tunnel in the northern rock to an area outside the valley. It is a wide opening with 2 high points on either side. The party is to stay by the fire there and await the signal by scouts, who will let them know if there is a lone frost giant in the area. Lorcam orders several soldiers to various directions, explaining that the trap system they're preparing is going to be set up in nearby locations throughout the day. The party's job is simple. At the signal, make noise and lure a giant to the open area and flee back into the mountain tunnel, clearing their escape by cutting a rope that will drop a slab of stone. It is then the party realizes they have been asked to be bait. A good number of Dwarfkin soldiers are on either side of the hills near a prearranged elaborate trap of tied-up cut-down trees which are camouflaged. Upon being cut, they will drop huge logs on any creature below. It is hoped that this will cripple and disarm any would-be giant invader. After several hours of waiting, a signal is given, and sure enough, soon after the party starts making noise, a giant appears through the tree line. The party goes to escape, but it is then that Osiris sees the pet mouse he gave to Alondra the night before go scurrying past him. He looks over at the crates and baskets of supplies on a nearby wagon and sees the young one, Alondra. She has been hiding in the wagon, but begins to scream as the giant comes into view. The stowaway is now feeling less than adventurous. The party realizes they must stay to defend the girl, though Julie makes a run for the tunnel, but is shouted down by Garan. Yegar runs and gets Alondra into a crevice as Osiris moves to distract the creature. The dwarves up top spring the trap, and the logs come crashing down, crippling the giant, who drops its weapon and flails about in pain. Soon after, the dwarves up top throw spears down at the giant, but stop. They are fighting someone or something at the top. But whoever they are fighting is just out of view of the party. A few dwarves fall from the cliffs. Some have arrows in them. The party then sees a Drakai appear on one of the cliffs, and it shoots an arrow at them and then disappears over the ridge. On the other side appears another Drakai, who shoots a couple of arrows at the party that seem to be way off target. Brother Goblet comes to realize the Drakai is trying to shoot the rope that is holding up the slab which would cover their escape. On the third shot, the rope is cut and the slab falls. The party is stuck in this gap with a flailing wounded giant. More Drakai appear on the hills and shoot arrows down on them. They exchange missiles with the Drakai and fight the giant, who, after a while, is killed by the attacks from above and below. When a few Drakai are wounded and one is killed, they disappear into the woodlands. Hyaphis, who has dealt with their kind before in the border wars, finds it strange for a Drakai war party to be this far north. The adventuring party manages to get the slab out of the way with the help of mountain furies who eventually arrive. They put the head of the frost giant and the body of the Drakai in the wagon. Captain Lorcam, who led them there, is nowhere to be seen, nor are many of the mountain furies who were setting traps on other parts. It is guessed that they were set upon by the Drakai war party. The adventurers return to Mohim and offer up the giant's head to the Helm, who tells his people it is the same giant that killed General Malpas. The party, knowing there is no way to know this, also knows it is wise to let helms be helms. Their silence buys them some political capital, and they are revered as further heroes for their service to the valley. The Helm then calls for another feast.